Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene on MTG Live, which is her podcast.
Magic the Gathering.
Right. I mean, with some of the things she says, it is a very fantastical world she's living in. So, I mean...
Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene streaming WoW on Twitch and shit-talking. No, I mean, like, the logo is very daytime talk show. But, like, all of these politicians are trying to have their own shows now. We had
Ted Cruz,
Josh Hawley has one, I believe, where he just talked about how porn is really scary. But Marjorie Taylor Greene uses her platform as a way to peddle what brought her to the House in the first place, which is conspiracy theories straight out of the Alex Jones playbook. Here she is suggesting that the July 4th shootings were maybe false flags.
Now, here's what I have to say. I mean, 2 shootings on July 4th, one in a rich white neighborhood and the other at a fireworks display. It almost sounds like it's designed to persuade Republicans to go along with more gun control. I mean, after all, remember, we didn't see that happen at all the Pride parades in the month of June, but as soon as we hit MAGA month, as soon as we hit the month that we're all celebrating, loving our country, we have shootings on July 4th. I mean, that's, that would sound like a conspiracy theory, right? Of course. But what's the definition of a right-wing conspiracy theory? Well, by the way, it's the news that's just 6 months early.
I mean, I'm gonna tap my mana here to reply to MTG. That was a Magic the Gathering reference.
Okay.
Yeah,
I am surrounded by dorks.
Wizards of the Coast have got to sue her over this. Like,
Right.
she's gonna do terrible for their brand.
Also, I love the aesthetic. It's like her logo looks like one of those like women-centric like daytime talk shows.
Yes,
it's like I don't associate her with that style, to be quite frank. But there it is. But it seemed like she was a little bit upset that this didn't happen at a Pride parade.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that was really bizarre. Right?
Well, maybe we should pull up the Patriot Front white supremacist group, which was thwarted, dozens of them at who were in the back of a U-Haul in Idaho, going there to beat up and attack people in the LGBTQ Pride event. I mean, that's just one thing.
Yeah. Also, this kid was apparently I've seen people in Highland Park. Maybe this needs to be verified, but I think a Trump supporter. Yeah, and also like you could also say it's a Jewish neighborhood, but you said it's a white neighborhood. I also like that Marjorie Taylor Greene acknowledges that Republicans are wealthy. Like, it's a wealthy neighborhood.
It's because it's predominantly Jewish. That's why she's saying something like that, I think. I mean, I don't know.
I think it's, I don't know. I think she associates themselves with, I mean, she's a business owner.
Maybe. I mean, I'm always like looking for like anti-Semitic coded language in her because she's the queen of, talking about globalists. So maybe I'm reading too much into it. But she also said on that same show, sorry if I cut you off, Binder, but she also said on that same show that the shooter, because the shooter dressed like a woman to escape or try to evade authorities, she was making some sort of dog whistle about this shooter also like being trans. So I think like but this fits into like her larger the conspiracy theory that she in particular is trying to foment. She tried it first with the Uvalde shooter, circulating those fake 4chan posts that said that the shooter was trans, which it was just a random trans woman, not the shooter itself, himself in Uvalde. And the fact that the shooter dresses in women's clothes to try to get away, and you pair that with the fact that she's saying like, why didn't this happen at Pride events, huh? And all of the emphasis on mental health. Their latest conspiracy that's brewing is that these are all mentally ill trans people who are gunning down, or people who have those kinds of proclivities who are gunning down others. I don't know. That's what I see.
Well, there's a few things I want to address here. Oh, wait, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you, Brandon. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say they have to come up with some both explanation and way to obfuscate how many mass shootings there are in this country, because there are just so many. There have been almost 340 mass shootings already this year. So on average, there are like over almost 2 a day in this country. So there's nothing suspicious about a mass shooting happening on July 4th. Statistically speaking, that happens every day in America. It's just like you have to like make all these carve outs to make it seem like these are anomalous events, because it's like the only country where like guaranteed every day there's going to be a mass shooting in this country.
Right. And there's a few things I wanted to address here. The second I saw the cops in their press conference say that the shooter was dressed as a woman, I knew the right was going to run with some sort of trans cross-dressing drag queen angle. I mean, I do think in the way that the police actually referenced it, I think it's fair to mention. I don't think that's what they were trying to do. But I knew the right was going to run with it. And the media ran with it too. I saw the New York Times putting that in the lead of their reporting, that this guy was wearing women's clothing, as if that was the most relevant part. Yes, it's important to mention, but it's not the lead of the story. I mean, it's pretty clear based on what we know that he was planning on going somewhere else and doing another shooting, possibly in Wisconsin, that he was wearing women's clothing because he actually wanted to escape. And what better way to escape than to change what you look like completely? So that's why he was wearing women's clothing. He wasn't trans or anything having to do with his gender identity or anything. Bank robbers wear pantyhose over their head. So that was not surprising to see them run with that. But also, the reason probably why there was this shooting, I mean, first of all, that's completely wrong. That like we just saw less than 2 months ago, a shooter in New York State drive 9 hours out of the way to target black people because that's specifically what his ideology told him to go and kill and inflict pain on. But also, there are shooters like the shooter from Highland Park, and I would say he's a lot like, in some ways, the Uvalde school shooter who just looking to hurt anybody and inflict pain on anyone. And so, what's the easiest place for them to go? Somewhere local, and that's what we know. The Uvalde shooter lived in the area. The Highland Park shooter, his dad is like a community, like a known community figure in the area. They have roots there. So that's the case and why they chose those areas. I mean, the reason probably to disappoint Marjorie Taylor Greene that there wasn't some shooting at a pride parade or something. Thank God there wasn't. But to answer that question, it's probably because in the places where there were pride parades, they probably have stricter gun laws because they happen in more liberal areas. I mean, strictly speaking, I mean, that's just one guess off the top of my head. And a lot of these shooters, unless they're driven by some sort of radical white supremacist ideology, they're kind of lazy and just go for whatever's closest.
And by the way, this is like very similar to, I just remembered the specifics of some of what she said about false flags in the past. One, she, harassed all of the kids from some of the kids from Parkland, and pretended it was a false flag. But this was also the same argument that she made for the massacre in Vegas, because it was at a country music festival, targeting conservatives, targeting people who are going to vote conservative so that they support gun control. But then why hasn't that happened yet, Marjorie Taylor Greene? Why has there been no gun control since any of these massacres? And yes, I am not counting whatever BS that this bipartisan group of 20 came up with in the Senate that only empowers law enforcement to do more and does really nothing to target the manufacturing and sale of these kinds of assault weapons, which is exactly what we need to do. Nothing has happened yet, and yet she's still recycling the same conspiracy theories she used before.
That's the other thing, though, that she's incorrect about. Republicans do support gun control, broadly speaking. People who identify as Republican, when you survey them, they support gun control. Not as much or as it's not as popular with them as it's with Democrats and independents, but it's definitely over a majority of Republicans support gun control. This is a very small minority, even of the Republican Party, who is just against every single gun control legislation. They just happen to be very vocal, and they happen to make up like a very radical base that has been empowered over generations by the Republican Party. But her, like, this idea that every mass shooting in America has to be a false flag is, either a strategy of hers or just like a coping mechanism to, explain how this is the best country in the world, but this is also the only country where this stuff happens. Like a lot of Americans are in deep, deep denial about how anomalous our mass shooting culture is in this country and how it's uniquely tied to things that are uniquely American. And that's why they're always looking for ways to make it seem not that bad or excuses to make it seem not as prevalent. Like when there was just a shooting in Copenhagen and every right winger was out there going like, oh, you see, I thought gun violence didn't happen anywhere else. It's like, it doesn't. Like, that's just an anomaly. You have identified an anomaly that happens very infrequently in other countries and are trying to prove a point that it just happens everywhere, when in reality, they've had less gun deaths in Denmark in the past 50 years. And I mean, we had 68 mass shootings in June alone.
Yeah.
Like 68 during the month of Pride, month before 67. Who knows how many it'll be in July before it's over, but some people have to find a way to square that circle where like this is the best country in the world, but it's also the only country where you might just be shot walking around, even if it's not like the most likely thing that would happen to you.